Welcome to the Pulse USA, where we provide insight, knowledge, and education on local businesses across the U.S.
Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Pulse USA. Today I have an exciting guest, Laura Garcia from Weinstein & Klein in Morristown, New Jersey. Laura, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. Laura, the reason I had you come on is a lot of people are looking to start their own business again. And I think there's a lot of people that don't know exactly where to begin. So why don't you give us a high-level overview, being a business attorney and helping these people? How do they begin and how do they start?
Absolutely. So for me, I'm in the business of avoiding issues, avoiding problems. So a lot of people assume that problems are lawsuits. They look at the big picture. Am I going to get sued? Is my partner going to sue me? Et cetera, et cetera. But that's not really what I'm focused on day to day. Obviously, I'm focused on avoiding lawsuits. That's baseline. That's foundational. I'm business forward and business minded. So the problems that I think about are actually on a more granular level. So when we're thinking about things like your name, are you going to have people coming after you because you're using their name that's trademarked? Are your clients going to have a bunch of questions every single day about your agreement? Do you even have an agreement? Are you going to be answering calls all day on these small details that you aren't contemplating, that you aren't advising your clients on in your written agreements? Those are the things that my clients focus on day to day. They may not be hopefully thinking about, oh my God, am I going to get sued every day? They're thinking about how can I focus on my business, work in my business, work on my business, and then have my legal foundation, my legal documentation, doing the work in the background to avoid those problems and those questions that come up every day.
That's terrific. But you just brought up naming and branding. And so many times I have clients come to me to start a new business and they want a website, let's just say. Now, I said, did you buy the name on GoDaddy? Yes, I bought the name on GoDaddy, but they never did any research to see if that name was in use. What are the steps involved in making sure that the name is not currently in use by another business?
Yeah, it's funny because you talk about how should they start? So you start with your name.
Right.
That's how you should start, right? If you know that your name will be your brand, it's a little different. Let's say you're in the commercial leasing space and you really don't care about the name. You just want the name to be the address. That's a different story. But Bruce, and I think you and I both deal with branding, marketing. How are you going to brand yourself and market your business? If you know that your domain is available, great. But what if your name is being used? Let's say you operate out of the state of New Jersey. There's 5 other companies. Maybe there's one that's using your exact name. So now you're conflicted out. Let's say there's multiple using similar versions of your name. Now you've got confusion. The public might be confused about who you are versus who they are. Even worse, let's say your name is subject to a trademark in your industry, in your area. So you have to look at all of those things. There's a deep, deep dive that we could do on the trademark side. And then there's just some basic searching we could do on the day-to-day. New Jersey, if you're a New Jersey entity, New York, if you're a New York entity. Let's say you're planning to operate in different states. What you don't want is to register your name here. It's great. You want to use it somewhere else down the line. You realize it's not available there. Now you have to do a DBA. Again, we talked about problems. Again, I'm not focused on just litigation and avoiding a lawsuit. I'm also focused on now you got to go and change your name. Now you have a domain that you just paid for. Can you even use it? Those are the headaches. Those are the problems that we're trying to avoid. And we do that by doing those initial searches in the beginning. We can do a trademark search. We can do an online search. We can do a domain search and an entity name search as well.
That's terrific. Do you also help them if they put up an e-commerce site and they want to sell across state lines and sell all over the United States? Could you also help them do that?
Absolutely. And there's so many things that they should think about. The first is, of course, their agreements. Does the agreement make sense across state lines? And when we're talking about interstate commerce, I'm also thinking about registrations. Should you be registered in other states, depending on the level of business, how involved you are in that other state? And the given is if you have an employee in another state, you should be registering. So those are all things that I help my clients with day to day.
Excellent. And do you also help them determine which corporation? Should it be an LLC or an S Corp? Do you help them also set that up?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you asked about that because I think a lot of people make assumptions about the entity type and they assume, well, Everyone's going to register as an LLC. Everyone's doing that nowadays, so I'll be an LLC. And then they find out later on that they want to have shareholders, they want to have more investors, they want to have more of an opportunity to bring on those investors. And it turns out that an LLC may not be the best mechanism for something like that. If you're trying to engage in some crowdfunding, maybe if you're trying to do capital infusions, those types of things, it's a little harder if you're an LLC.
And what about partnerships where they have buy-sell agreements? Do you also help them with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And that's so important. So that's when we're going down the road of, okay, the life cycle of the business. Maybe it was just you in the beginning. Maybe the LLC just you made sense. Maybe long-term, you want to be a corp instead, depending on your long-term goals. So we're always thinking about the short-term and the long-term. So long-term, maybe a corporation would be better, depending on your circumstance. Also just taxes. And so you mentioned partnerships. That's really important too. And we do a lot of buy-sell agreements. That's critical. If it's just two people, what's going to happen if one of them is no longer available? And I say available, a lot of people assume, buy-sell, if it's death, of course, that's the obvious morbid situation. What if you're disabled, totally disabled? How is that going to work? Are there going to be automatic buyout mechanisms involved? So we're always thinking about that. We're not just creating templates. I always say we're not a human legal Zoom. We're not just, one and done. We're always thinking about your business as a whole. We get granular, we get high level, we just care about you and your business. So those are some of the things that we focus on, Bruce, is, okay, what if someone dies or becomes disabled? What do we do now?
You don't want to bring that up, but it's the truth. Those happen in everyday occurrences, and you have to face that situation and you have to address it. And that's why it's so important to obtain a good attorney that's going to protect you in those instances. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's important to have people in your corner, and not even just attorneys. So good CPAs. So when people ask what type of entity do I form, I always think, well, what does your CPA think about that? Your tax advisors. There are different tax considerations. But then that's where we complement each other, right? Because let's say you want to be taxed as a partnership, or let's say you want to be taxed as an S Corp, and you have different classes of shareholders or owners. Well, those are all things that come into play. That's where I pick up the phone, I call the CPA and say, hey, are you taking a look at this? Have you seen this? Have you seen that? And then we all complement each other. So yes.
And you collectively work together. That's great.
It's important to have someone in your corner that's an integral part of your team, but that thinks about those things. LegalZoom is not the end all be all for people, but sometimes I'll just get on the phone and say, maybe this is good for LegalZoom, right? If this is what you're really looking for. But again, we are in the business of long-term growth and long-term business planning and protection. Individually, it impacts you, it impacts your bottom line, it impacts your kids' college education and tuition and the things that you budget for. So we're always just, again, business focused, but just human minded. And I don't think LegalZoom will really think about the human aspect of any of it. I don't know if humans are even looking at that anymore.
But let me ask you this too, because you just made me think of something on websites. The actual terms and conditions and the privacy policies on websites. Do you also help clients with those?
Yes, and in this day and age, when everything's data driven, it can be a massive liability if you don't have a set terms and conditions, privacy policy. And of course, the no-brainer is if you are handling sensitive client data, you need to have that in place. Absolutely. And we do that. And I actually like that part of it. I think it's really fun when I'm dealing with the tech side and the data side and the privacy side of things. You're able to think a bit more granularly. And I love thinking outside the box. That's definitely one of those moments.
This is great. Laura, this is really great information for people to understand, the facets of a business and starting a business. If someone has a business question, how do they get in touch with you?
So they can email me. My email is lgarcia@weinsteinklein.com. It's going to pop up on the screen, I'm sure. My direct dial is available on my website. You go to weinsteinklein.com, click on our team. You could find my website and my bio there as well. But email is best, and we'll set up a time to chat.
Well, I'm sure the audience is definitely going to be reaching out to you to answer you some business questions for sure. Laura, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing this information with the audience.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I'm so happy to spend some time with you.
Anytime. We'll have you on again for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.